Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Government eases inbound quarantine rules and gives more room for airlines to comply with regulations. Queues are back at the city's vaccination centers as people prepare for the next phase of the vaccine mandate. And Real Madrid are European champions for a record-extending 14th time. The government has once again adjusted inbound quarantine rules to make it easier for people to return to Hong Kong. Children under 3 and transit passengers will no longer need pre-boarding PCR tests, while airlines will have more leeway to avoid route suspensions. Macy Mock reports.
To strengthen infection control, overseas arrivals are now required to do 3 PCR tests. Apart from swabs 5 and 12 days after arrival, a 3rd test is now required for inbound travelers on the 9th day or 2 days after they have completed hotel quarantine.
Our experience shows that there might be rare chances of transmission of COVID-19 within the designated quarantine hotels. So, in case if an inbound traveler get infected during their quarantine in the designated quarantine hotel, especially in the later part of the quarantine period, and then a day-night testing will increase or enable us to detect these cases at an earlier stage.
Meanwhile, a flight suspension mechanism is relaxed to give airlines more breathing room to remain in operation. Starting from next month, a carrier will be warned and fined $20,000 if a particular route breaks the rule for the first time. But upon a second violation within 10 days, that route will be suspended for 5 days. It will also be easier for inbound passengers to fulfill pre-departure requirements. They will still need to provide a negative PCR test result, but not necessarily from an accredited overseas laboratory. Children aged below 3 and transit passengers will not need to produce a negative PCR result altogether. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Another nightclub in Lan Kwai Fong has reported a COVID outbreak. At least 11 patrons of the Iron Fairies at Chinacamp Hollywood Center have now tested positive.
According to the information provided by the cases, they have masked off activities inside the bar. Some of them, they have dancing activity, and also they drink alcohol. So we suspected that there may be a super spreader or an infectious person who had entered this bar on that night and causing the spread and also the outbreak.
Authorities said around 700 people visited the club on Hollywood Road on May 21st. 1 man and 10 women have since developed symptoms in the following days. Another 4 people who visited the Central nightclub the same evening are now positive, taking the cluster there to 15. They were part of 237 new COVID cases today, which also included 37 imported infections. Hong Kongers will have to be triple jabbed against COVID before eating out or going to the cinema from Tuesday, when the next phase of the vaccine mandate takes effect. But 600,000 people still do not meet the requirement. Isaac Lee reports.
While Hong Kong's COVID infections have remained in the low 3 digits for some time, vaccination centers are suddenly packed again. Instead of feeling at risk, many came for jabs just to fulfill the government's next phase of the vaccine mandate, which kicks in later this week. This man said even though he was worried about side effects, he had no choice but to get a 3rd shot so he can continue to eat out. Another woman didn't know when she needed a booster jab, but signed up anyway, since it was only a matter of time before it becomes mandatory. From Tuesday, anyone must be triple jabbed to enter restaurants, cinemas, gyms, and other premises bound by the vaccine pass. But those who contracted COVID or received their 2nd dose in the past 6 months will be exempt. Patrick Nip, the top government minister in charge of the vaccination program, revealed that 600,000 people, or nearly 8% of the city's population, do not meet either requirement above. He estimated some of them are recovered COVID patients who have not yet updated their status on the government's database. NIP denied reaching an impasse on the vaccination drive, saying 600,000 people have had their third jab so far this month. Exactly, HKIBC.
A public consultation on adjusting the minimum wage will end in 2 days, but workers won't be getting a pay rise until next year. Labour Chief Law Chi-kwang stood by the mechanism, saying it is effective and caters to everyone's interests. Here's Macy Mock.
A 6-week public consultation on whether it's time for workers receiving minimum wage to get a pay rise will conclude on Tuesday. While the minimum wage is reviewed every 2 years, it has remained at $37.5 per hour since 2019. That's because the wages were frozen last time out, and labor unions have long complained that the mechanism is making life difficult for grassroots workers who are more vulnerable to inflation. But Labor and Welfare Secretary Law Chi-kwang shot down calls to conduct reviews annually, saying it was not feasible under the current framework. He insisted the spirit of the Minimum Wage Commission is to balance the interests of different sectors. It's not about whose voice is bigger, he claimed. This would only deepen divisions in society. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The convener of the Executive Council is calling on the next administration to improve communication with the public and restore the city's international profile. Bernard Chen also hinted he may not remain in the top policy-making body, saying it needs fresh faces. Chloe Fong reports.
Speaking to the press after attending a radio interview, Executive Council convener Bernard Chen gave the strongest hint yet that he would depart the top policy-making and advisory body, which he has served for over a decade.
I have served in Executive Council for almost 13 years under pretty much all 4 chief executives, so it's been quite some time already. So I'm sure that the incoming chief executive would have his own team. I'm pretty sure that he will have his own recruits for the new Executive Council. So I think Hong Kong deserves new changes and new hope.
Looking back, Chen said the social unrest in 2019 and the COVID pandemic the following year caused distrust in society and hampered the government's efficiency. He called on the next administration headed by Zhong Li to think out of the box and improve communication with the public using innovative channels, including social media. Chen also urged new leaders to act fast and restore the city's reputation.
We have lost a lot of our grounds in the past couple of years, so I think it's very important that we need to restore the international profile of Hong Kong, as well as our connectivity to the mainland, because Hong Kong's future is always about our connectivity to China. That's the biggest market in the world.
Chen also proposed diversifying the city's economy. He gave the example of the cultural industry, which he believes has great potential to lure overseas talent to Hong Kong. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Turning overseas, U.S. President Joe Biden and his right-hand woman Kamala Harris both called for unity amid the recent gun violence. People across the United States continued to pay tribute to the victims of the tragedies. Isaac Lee reports.
Emotions ran high at a church in Uvalde, Texas, where a vigil was held for the 19 students and 2 teachers gunned down by a teenager at Robb Elementary School 5 days ago.
And it's okay. It's okay to be angry. But as you have heard me say, don't allow it to turn into hate. There's so much hate in this world. We need to share love in the midst of our anger, of our sorrow, of our sadness.
Outside the campus where the tragedy occurred, Some left messages for the victims. But it was not the only deadly gun crime which gripped Americans. 2 weeks ago, a white gunman opened fire at a black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, taking 13 lives. While attending a funeral to commemorate the oldest victim in the attack, Vice President Kamala Harris said the US is experiencing the epidemic of hate.
Enough is enough. We will come together based on what we all know we have in common, and we will not let those people who are motivated by hate separate us or make us feel fear.
Striking a similar tone was President Joe Biden, who gave a speech at the graduation ceremony of his alma mater.
We cannot outlaw tragedy, I know, but we can make America safer. So I call on all Americans this hour to join hands and make your voices heard and work together to make this nation what it can and should be.
He told the 6,000 graduates at the University of Delaware to engage in public life and the life of the nation. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
At least 31 people were killed and 7 others injured from a stampede at a church charity event in southern Nigeria. People were seen lying in the open field, with many stretchered to hospital. One witness said that the victims included a pregnant woman and children. Some church members were also attacked and injured by relatives of the victims after the accident. The annual event was scheduled to begin at 9 a.m., but many arrived as early as before dawn, hoping to secure cheap food. It's suspected that someone might have torn down the gate, leading to the tragedy. That's our main news for Sunday night. Join us for more updates at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.